disruptive.
Weird thing to happen. So we've been talking a bit about the investigation of, Charlie Kirk and the assassination and, the FBI releasing details about this 22-year-old suspect that they have in custody. They believe he was the perpetrator who shot at Charlie Kirk, and kind of going to details about how myself and maybe other people can, vouch for this, that it just seems a bit too suspicious. The narrative that they're putting out, the story that they're trying to suck people in, that somehow this 22-year-old who has a military marksman capability was able to climb the top of a building on a college campus, how they're leaving out parts of the investigation. They're not apprehending the two individuals that were giving hand signals, as we pointed out before. There's a lot of details that have been left out, but they want us to believe that this 22-year-old who was ratted out by his father was able to construct this. And apparently he's been radicalized by leftist ideology and college campuses and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. And as I stated, if that were the case, hypothetically, if that was set in stone why exactly Charlie Kirk died, why did they chose this exact moment? Why, all the times that Charlie Kirk has been on college campuses, all the times that he has debated with liberals and lefties and transgender and so on, why specifically this moment? That's the big question that I've been having about this. And as we're seeing more details about what Charlie Kirk has said prior to the incident, has started to raise a bit of eyebrows. So the Grayzone did this article here. I thought it was pretty fascinating. It says Charlie Kirk refused Netanyahu funding offer, was frightened by pro-Israel forces before death, a friend reveals. So this is from Max Blumenthal and Ayanna Prayerpaul, who's done, fantastic work. Max Blumenthal, working at the Grayzone. He's a Jewish journalist, so it's not anti-Semitic that he's doing this. He's, just being a journalist investigating this. And they're, raising some eyebrows on, Charlie Kirk. And again, they don't agree with everything that he states. They're not part of Turning Point USA. But even they can come forward and say that it's a little suspicious that this individual, who was very much on the side of Israel, very much pro-Israel, defensive on, the genocide, defending the actions of Netanyahu, defending the actions, that just prior to this, he would start to rock the boat on the Israeli narrative, on, how AIPAC lobbies control and deceive American politicians. He was starting to rock the boat about Epstein, but it gets even more interesting. So a Trump insider and longtime friend of Charlie Kirk tells the Grayzone how the assassination conservative leader's turning point on Israel influence provoked a private backlash from Netanyahu's allies that left him angry and afraid. The source said anxiety spread within the Trump administration after a apparent Israeli spying operation was uncovered. Charlie Kirk rejected an offer earlier this year from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to arrange a massive new infusion of Zionist money into Turning Point USA organization, America's largest conservative youth association, according to a longtime friend of the slain commentator speaking on the condition of anonymity. The source told the Grayzone that the late pro-Trump influencer believed Netanyahu was trying to cow him into silence as he began to publicly question Israel's overwhelming influence in Washington and demanded more space to criticize it. And you recall, we covered it the last segment. Benjamin Netanyahu jumped on to American media to try to denounce Israel in its connection to this, and also blurted out that he was inviting Charlie Kirk directly to Israel, that he was inviting him on, just like they've done with other influencers and podcasters. They invite them on to Israel. They, give them this grand tour. We want to just talk to you guys. We want to just reach out to you. We were giving you a private tour of the great nation of Israel. There's nothing nefarious about occupying your space or bribing you or extorting you or blackmailing you. We just want to show you off. We just want to show how beautiful this apartheid state really is. So it kind of reveals itself the more Netanyahu comes forward to try to denounce it. And as I stated, it sounds like O.J. Simpson when he wrote the book, Did I Do It? That he's coming forward, jumping onto the fact that no, Israel had no part of this. It's crazy. It's anti-Semitic. It's out of control. But also revealing the fact that he had connection with Charlie Kirk. So, in weeks leading up to his September 10th assassination, Kirk had come to loathe the Israeli leader, regarding him as a bully, the source said. Kirk was disgusted by what he witnessed inside the Trump administration, where Netanyahu sought to personally dictate the president's personal decisions and weaponize Israeli assets like billionaire donor Miriam Adelson to keep the White House firmly under his thumb. Remember, Trump congratulated the Adelsons. Trump was happy he got a blank check from Sheldon Miriam Adelson. That was during his first administration. And now here we are in the second term, and we could deeply tell that the Trump administration has been co-opted, has been bullied, has been extorted for Israeli purposes. According to Kirk's friend, who also enjoyed access to President Donald Trump and his inner circle, Kirk strongly warned Trump last June against bombing Iran on Israel's behalf. Charlie was the only person who did that, they said, recalling how Trump barked at him in response and angrily shut down the conversation. The source believes the incident confirmed in Kirk's mind that the president of the United States had fallen under the control of a malign foreign power and was leading his own country into a series of disastrous conflicts. By the following month, Kirk had become the target of a sustained private campaign of intimidation and free-floating fury by wealthy and powerful elites of Netanyahu, figures he described in an interview as Jewish leaders and stakeholders. He was afraid of them, the source emphasized. Kirk was 18 years old when he launched TPUSA in 2012. From its inception, his career was propelled by Zionist donors. He showed his young organization with money through neoconservative outfits like David Horowitz Freedom Center. He repaid his wealthy backers over the years by unleashing a relentless firehouse of anti-Palestinian and Islamophobic statements, accepting propaganda trips to Israel, and sternly shutting down nationalist forces challenging his support for Israel during TPUSA events. In the Trump era, few American Gentiles had proved more valuable to the self-proclaimed Jewish state than Charlie Kirk. But as Israel's genocidal assault on the besieged Gaza Strip drove as an unprecedented backlash within grassroots right-wing circles, where only 24% of younger Republicans now sympathize with Israel over Palestine, Kirk began to shift. At times, he toed the Israeli line, spreading disinformation about babies beheaded by Hamas on October 7th and denying the famine imposed on the Gaza population. Yet, he simultaneously seceded to his base, wondering aloud if Jeffrey Epstein was an Israeli intelligence asset, questioning whether the Israeli government allowed the October 7th attacks to proceed in order to advance long-term political goals, and parroting narratives familiar to his most ferocious critic on the right, streamer Nick Fuentes. This July, at the TPUSA Student Action Summit, Kirk provided a forum for the right-wing grassroots to vent its fury about Israel's political hammerlock on the Trump administration. There, speakers from former Fox News stalwarts Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly to the anti-Zionist Jewish comedian David Smith denounced Israel's blood-soaked assault on the besieged Gaza Strip, branded Jeffrey Epstein as an Israeli intelligence asset, and openly taunted Zionist billionaires like Bill Ackman for getting away with scams despite having no actual skills. So this was very problematic for people within that circle, that, being backed by these billionaires that are definitely co-opted with foreign intelligence, deeply co-opted with a foreign entity, that now being a vocalist to criticize that foreign entity, to be criticizing, Mossad and the CIA and the connections between Israel and American politics, how they're deceiving and depriving American institutions through blackmail operations, how these billionaires are buying up politicians to be anti-American, be pro foreign nation of Israel. That is going to, scare a lot of people, because now people in the Turning Point USA crowd, especially younger Republicans that are against what's happening in Gaza and against the nation of Israel, these billionaires are going to leash out against Turning Point USA. And they have already done so. They already went after Charlie Kirk for allowing people like Tucker Carlson and Dave Smith, and in some cases Megyn Kelly, even though Megyn Kelly's not a, vocalist about being against Gaza, but she's spoken out about Epstein. That was problematic for the billionaire class that pretty much bought out Charlie Kirk. And they saw this as the start of this feud. So, following the confab, Kirk was bombarded with infuriated text messages and phone calls from Netanyahu's wealthy allies in the United States, including many who have funded Turning Point USA. According to his longtime friend, the Zionist donors treated Kirk with outright contempt, essentially ordering him to fall back into line. He was being told what you're not allowed to do, and it was driving him crazy, Kirk's friend recalled. The conservative youth leader was not only alienated by the hostile nature of the interactions, but frightened by the backlash. The friend's account dovetails with those of multiple right-wing commentators with access to Kirk. I think in the end, Charlie was going through a spiritual transformation. Candace Owens, a conservative influencer who shifted decisively against Israel after October 7th, reflected after her friend's killing. I know it. He was going through a lot. There was a lot of pressure, and it's hard for me to watch the people who were pressuring him to just say the things that they're saying. She continued, they wanted him to lose everything for changing or even slightly modifying an opinion. It's very hurtful to me. Kirk appeared visibly outraged during an August 6th interview with conservative host Megyn Kelly as he discussed the menacing messages he was receiving from pro-Israel bigwigs. It's all the sun. Oh, Charlie, he's no longer with us. Wait a second. What does with us mean exactly? I'm an American, okay? I represent this country, he explained before addressing the powerful Zionist interests harassing him. The more that you guys privately and publicly call our character into question, which is not isolated, it would be one thing if it would just one text or two texts. It is a dozen of texts. Then we'd start to say, whoa, hold the boat there, Kirk confirmed. To be fair, some really good Jewish friends say that that's not all of us, but these are leaders here. These are stakeholders. So, again, this is about rocking the boat of the billionaire class. It's not about attacking Jewish people. People like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and, people that they claim are anti-Semitic and going after, the Jewish population. It's not about people's religion or faith or whatever the case may be. It's about rocking powerful interests that have deliberately captured your government. Deliberately captured your government. And Charlie Kirk being a very influential person that he is, bringing a large crowd of, young Republicans and people of all sorts to his debates and to his rallies and to events at Turning Point USA, being bought by these highly regarded influential billionaires that, pretty much funded the idea of Turning Point USA. And now Charlie Kirk having this kind of moment, this kind of epiphany moment to start calling out the special interest, to start saying, hey, there's something suspicious. As an American, I don't like how foreign governments, in this case, Israel, is influencing our politics, influencing the shape and form of the country. Like, it's just, it's un-American that we're doing this. So that was kind of starting to rock the boat. One of his final interviews, conducted with Israel's premier influencer in the United States, Ben Shapiro, Kirk once again tried to raise the issue of censorship of Israel critics. A friend said to me increasingly, Charlie, okay, we pushed back against the media on COVID, on lockdowns, on Ukraine. Because let's not forget, Charlie Kirk is on the Ukraine hit list. So it could very much be Ukraine. That's why I'm saying that I'm not putting my foot down to say one country's involved or this person's involved. That there's a lot to be said about this, and there's a lot to need to be investigated. Charlie Kirk was very vocal about the Ukraine war. And if you remember the second assassinator to Donald Trump on the golf course, that guy that was trying to, shoot the president was very, very vocal on Ukraine, was a very, very highly regarded influencer for the Ukraine agenda. So it would not surprise me if it was Israel, if it was Ukraine, or if it was just the State Department that they want to take out Charlie Kirk because the State Department is co-opted with the Ukraine agenda and the Israeli agenda. But here's where it gets interesting. Kirk told Shapiro on September 9th. That was literally a day before, by the way, his last interview. Maybe we should also ask the question, is the media totally presenting the truth when it comes to Israel? Just a question. According to Kirk's longtime friend, Kirk's resentment of Netanyahu and the Israeli lobby was spreading within Trump's inner circle. In fact, they said the president himself was terrified of Netanyahu's wrath and feared the consequences of defying him. During the past year, the Trump insider was told by contacts in the White House that the Secret Service has caught Israeli government personnel placing electronic devices on its emergency response vehicles on 2 separate occasions. While the Grayzone was unable to confirm the story with the Secret Service or White House, such an incident would have not been unprecedented. Indeed, according to a report in Politico, sending 3 former senior U.S. officials a cell phone spying device was placed by Israeli agents near the White House and other sensitive locations around Washington toward the end of Trump's first term in 2019. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson recounted a similar incident in his memoir, writing that his security team found a listening device in his bathroom soon after Netanyahu used his personal toilet. So, there's a lot into this story, ladies and gentlemen. A lot into this story. And going into this, I knew I wasn't going to believe the FBI story. I knew I wasn't going to believe the law enforcement story. That it seems so crazy that it was a lonesome 22-year-old that somehow just got radicalized to be against Charlie Kirk, leftist ideology, whatever the case may be. That now they're saying that, oh, he had a transgender lover, that he's cooperating with the FBI, and the father turned him in, and it just seems so weird. It seems so suspicious. And given the fact that we've seen, numerous times of American media, uh, covering up stories, or they're lying to you, or they're trying to hide the rest of the investigation. And like I said, there's a lot of things that should be investigated. We still don't know about those two individuals that were giving hand signals. We have no confirmation about the security camera that was behind Charlie Kirk. There's a lot of things that need to be questioned about this, that obviously they're trying to cover up. So here, I just want to show people, this was one of Charlie Kirk's last videos on his show here before the day before it happened. And here's Charlie Kirk going after predominant Israel people that were trying to diminish the Epstein files. And again, this is coming from someone who's been very vocal in support of Israel and being vocal of the state of Israel. And now here he is rocking the boat when it comes to the Epstein files.
Lies that Epstein, with his little friend Ghislaine and Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, who was obviously a spy of the Israeli intelligence agencies, that there was something else going on here. Epstein was not some sort of whiz-kid hedge fund manager. Epstein was playing a part. Epstein was a LARPer. Epstein was cast for a specific role, and he played it really well. The sweatpants and the Harvard jacket, the kind of disheveled hair, looking as if he was so smart and above the clouds that he was doing advanced mathematic equations on the back of napkins. But if you actually go into some of the videos of people that met with Epstein at the time, they said he was awfully unimpressive when it came to finance and markets and economics. And it's nothing new that if you're in the intel agencies, you want to try and get as much blackmail on powerful people as possible. Easy, not hard. And this is no longer just speculation. First of all, the evidence that shows that Epstein was a creation of either Mossad, Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, Saudi intelligence, or maybe he was just a hired gun. Maybe he was just the guy that countries would go to and park a couple $100 million and say, hey, can you get one of the members of the royal family with a 13-year-old so we can get them to do what we want to do? Members of Congress are actively being blackmailed. The Epstein playbook is being used on a daily basis. Jeffrey Epstein was not a financier. He was not a hedge fund manager. Jeffrey Epstein was a key player in a multi-decade blackmail operation.
So, if that's a statement you say before you unfortunately no longer exist, that is kind of dark and revelating, folks. That's why it's crucial to share this information. And given the fact that on the exact day that Charlie Kirk got shot and died, was the day that Congress voted once again to not release the Epstein files. The exact same day. And this is just prior to that incident. This was just prior to the incident that Charlie Kirk, again, someone who's very devoted to Israel, very devoted to, kind of cheerleading for the genocide in Gaza, is starting to rock the boat, because even with that, he is an American and he's very much pro-America. And considering his own audience is, starting to question and starting to be speculative on why they won't release the Epstein files, now he's going to start asking questions. Like, why are we not allowed to understand how a guy who grew up in a blue-collar household, whose biggest claim to fame as being a math professor at the Dalton School, is able to be a luxurious financier that buys a private island for himself, a private jet, and is able to escort very highly regarded, influential people off and on the island? How is he able to do that if he's a simple math professor? Like, these are questions we should be asking. These are questions we should be asking And that was starting what Charlie Kirk was starting to ask is, do you not find it suspicious? Do you not find it suspicious that they won't release this information? And as we saw with the Grayzone article, that does not sit well with the donor class. That does not sit well with a lot of, influential people that have bought into Turning Point USA and maybe funded Turning Point USA. Here's the last interview he ever had with Ben Shapiro. And we know Ben Shapiro very, very, very staunchly, grotesquely, for genocide and for Israel, and denounces anyone to have opposition. And here's Charlie Kirk bringing on that subject matter to say, hey, if the media is lying about so much, maybe they're not telling us the truth about Israel. And watch Ben Shapiro's reaction.
Charlie, we've pushed back against the media on COVID, on lockdowns, on Ukraine, on the border, so maybe we should also ask a question. Is the media totally presenting the truth when it comes to Israel? Just a question, that maybe we shouldn't believe everything the media says, because I know I've been conditioned to ask a lot more critical questions over the last couple of years. So, Ben, some people would accuse Israel of wanting to ethnically cleanse. Some people in the Israeli government are saying, again, it's all over the place, right? You have opinions all over. In your opinion, what would a good outcome 5 years from now be, and how does one respond to the claims of ethnic cleansing?
So that was him with Ben Shapiro in his last interview, starting to question the Israeli narrative. And you get there's lots of clips out there of prior to him on Patrick Bet-David's podcast, where, again, being a vocal, pro-Christian, pro kind of Zionist guy he is, starting to question the Israeli narrative, because he went over there, he saw what was happening, and he told Patrick Bet-David that, he has a hunch now that they're ethnically cleansing Gazans. That is the intention. And he stayed openly, he was vocal about it, that, as someone that supports this said nation, that now that I'm seeing the agenda, now that I'm seeing the light and seeing what's happening, I don't believe the narrative that they're presenting to me. I don't believe what they're telling me when I see the opposite. And again, doesn't sit well with a lot of the billionaire class. It doesn't sit well with people that are very much staunchly for genocide and whatnot. Here's another video of his, because we know that a lot of critics of the, pro-Zionist people out there want to, diminish people from having this argument, or they want to silence them out. They want to call them anti-Semitic. And here's him in a video of his where he even states, as someone that supports your message, I'm willing to hear the other side, that I'm not going to silence out another person's opinion, especially on something like this. Watch.
Said what Tucker said is anti-Semitic. If we were to cancel Tucker, would anti-Semitism increase or decrease?
I think increase, because that means any supporter of Tucker Carlson's statement therefore makes them anti-Semite.
Exactly. And association, 100%.
Exactly.
But the binary that's presented is that if you don't passionately talk about it, you are a hater. That's probably destructive for everybody involved. So for me, I'm trying to find this new path, which is, I love Israel. I visited there. My wife and I had the best experiences ever. I saw where Jesus rose from the dead and he walked on water. But also, I'm an American, and I represent a generation that can't afford anything, and that we are flooded with illegals, and no one speaks English, and our hospitals are clogged. I think we need to have the prudence to reject the Jew hate. Okay, we're not going to put up with that. That's dumb. But also, if you call everyone an anti-Semite, if they don't take a puritanical view of the Netanyahu government, then I think it's bad for everybody.
So there's Charlie Kirk, as even stating he's a very much pro-Israel guy, even willing to say, hey, I'm not going to silence out critics. I'm not going to silence out someone that is going to openly state their argument against Israel. And anyone that does, it's not proving anything. And it's making the situation worse. And that doesn't sit well with someone like Netanyahu, who ultimately is telling American politicians through AIPAC, through money laundering and bribing and blackmail and deceit, to start cracking down on more Americans and cracking down on free speech. And as Charlie Kirk says, he's an American. As an American, he respects free speech. That even for someone like him being pro-Israel, he's not going to silence out Tucker Carlson. He's not going to call out Candace Owens and start, harassing her as some sort of anti-Semite. Because as an American, you have the right to free speech. That's a constitutional right. And no entity, foreign or domestic, has the right to smash that down. Which I think is very crucial. That's one of the things that I can respect the most out of Charlie Kirk. I disagree with a lot of him, but I can respect him of that. So here's James Lee, Max Blumenthal, who just wrote the article we read. Max Blumenthal just told Tim Dillon that Donald Trump fears for his life, specifically because of Israel, and that during one of Netanyahu's visits this year, Secret Service discovered electronic devices are in emergency response vehicles placed by Israeli agents. This is a foreign country that are harassing American politicians. Just like we know how here in Canada, we have foreign entities harassing our politicians. Like, this should not be allowed. Should not be allowed, period. I don't care what country it is. And here is Max Blumenthal telling Tim Dillon that Trump is now in fear of his life. Because if he's not 100% on board with the pro-Zionist, pro-war messaging coming out of Netanyahu, that he worries that something might happen to him. Watch this.
Does the President of the United States fear for his life?
Yes. Yes. I mean, obviously he fears for his life. And I was told that he feared for his life before the 2 assassination attempts, one coming within a millimeter of striking his head. I mean, let's not forget about that.
But I mean, just to clarify, he doesn't fear for his life because of Ireland.
I mean, I've been told, yes, that Israel is a major source of concern for Trump. I mean, think about it. What would happen
this
if
is
the
our
president
ally.
just if he suspended arms to if he suspended arms to a country that carries out assassinations all across the globe, that specializes in assassinations, that has an entire wing of its intelligence services that conducts assassinations, including with household goods like pagers, would you not be scared? So yes, Trump is scared. And what I learned from this source, who is a Trump insider, someone who talks to who talks to people in the Oval Office, people close to Trump, is that during one of Netanyahu's many visits to the U.S. this year, some figures in his retinue, Israeli agents, placed electronic devices on emergency response Secret Service vehicles. The Secret Service found them and they reported this to the White House. These would be emergency response vehicles that would respond to an incident potentially involving the president.
Now think about that. Think about that. If that was, Iran, Iraq, an Arab nation, there'd be nonstop reports on this. There'd be nonstop, just toe-to-toe media coverage on that. I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know anything that supposedly Netanyahu had secret agents of his placing listening devices and certain surveillance equipment on Secret Service vehicles and emergency vehicles within the White House. Why was there no media coverage on this? Why was there no media coverage on this? Again, if it was any other country, there'd be toe-to-toe coverage. There'd be anger. There'd be frustration. There'd be riots on the streets. How dare a foreign country enlist agents to put surveillance gear onto our government's cars, to our government? Why would anyone want to do this? Oh, but because it's Israel, it's our closest ally. Not a peep, not a word, not a mention. And as, you know, Max Blumenthal, a Jewish journalist, is stating here, why wouldn't you fear for your life? Like, these are rogue people that have done unspeakable things to so many individuals, even outside of Palestine, even outside of Gaza. They have just created this world. You know, there's a 60 Minutes interview with Leslie Stahl where they actually contacted a member who was part of Mossad, and they even stated openly on camera, they created this world where they occupy, they control, they decide how the world functions. They put out the narratives. They're the ones writing the screenplays. They're the ones that are controlling culture. Like, how would you not be terrified? How would you not be terrified that they're putting listening devices on, they're blackmailing, they're deceiving people? They have this, you know, decades-long trafficking network that Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Prince Andrew, you know, the Clintons, Bill Gates, like predominant people around the world are a part of. It is shocking, folks. It is shocking, folks. And it's a lot, and there's so much details that aren't being reported on this. So I want to add with this, too, that while Max Blumenthal made that statement, sadly, this isn't even new. Because here, this is Fox News, did a report 24 years ago, shortly after 9/11, on a massive Israeli espionage operation within the United States. The report said Mossad warned the United States about 9/11, but was vague and imprecise. This is the same kind of warning happened with the Beirut Marine Barracks bombing in 1983. Fox was under tremendous pressure to end its reporting, get it before X takes it down. So here, I want to show people, this is from December 12th of 2001, where Fox News is reporting that Israel had spies within the United States putting these devices that are spying on Americans and collecting data for its own personal agenda. Again, if it was an Arab nation, you'd be up in arms, people would be rioting on the streets. But because it's our said ally, our good friends, not a word about this. Why is that the case? Well, here's a bit of the details.
It has been more than 16 years since a civilian working for the Navy was charged with passing secrets to Israel. Jonathan Pollard pled guilty to conspiracy to commit espionage and is serving a life sentence. At first, Israeli leaders claimed Pollard was part of a rogue operation, but later took responsibility for his work. Now, Fox News has learned some U.S. investigators believe that there are Israelis again very much engaged in spying in and on the U.S., who may have known things they didn't tell us before September 11th. Fox News correspondent Carl Cameron has details in the first of a 4-part series.
Since September 11th, more than 60 Israelis have been arrested or detained, either under the new Patriot anti-terrorism law or for immigration violations. A handful of active Israeli military were among those detained, according to investigators, who say some of the detainees also failed polygraph questions when asked about alleged surveillance activities against and in the United States. There is no indication that the Israelis were involved in the 9/11 attacks, but investigators suspect that the Israelis may have gathered intelligence about the attacks in advance and not shared it. A highly placed investigator said there are, quote, tie-ins, but when asked for details, he flatly refused to describe them, saying, quote, evidence linking these Israelis to 9/11 is classified. I cannot tell you about evidence that has been gathered. It's classified information. Fox News has learned that one group of Israelis, spotted in North Carolina recently, is suspected of keeping an apartment in California to spy on a group of Arabs who the United States is also investigating for links to terrorism. Numerous classified documents obtained by Fox News indicate that even prior to September 11th, as many as 140 other Israelis had been detained or arrested in a secretive and sprawling investigation into suspected espionage by Israelis in the United States.
You're good allies, ladies and gentlemen. You're good friends. I don't consider friends if someone's going to actively surveil on me, blackmail me, deceive me, and resort to violent iterations to get their agenda ahead of anyone else. That is just mind-blowing, folks. Mind-blowing, folks. So, like I said, a lot of evidence points in this direction. I am not confirming that, the state of Israel did conduct in the murder of Charlie Kirk. That's not what I'm, proposing here. Because there's also evidence about Ukraine. There's also evidence about, his run-ins with, the state. Like, who really knows exactly? But, you see all the, past instances where Charlie Kirk was starting to rock the narrative and starting to, question a lot of big key figures in what's been happening in the last recent years. And you just kind of have to look upon yourselves to see what is more details need to be addressed before people come to conclusions. Like, I don't believe at all that somehow a 22-year-old was able to do this alone. That there had to be some sort of cohorts behind him. And if it was the case of lefty lunacy, why now? Why did they choose right now? Of all the times that Charlie Kirk has appeared at college campuses, of all the times that he's debated people, of all the times that people have confronted him and talked to him and shouting matches, whatever the case may be. Again, as someone that generally doesn't like, I don't agree with Charlie Kirk on a lot of things. Why did they choose now? Why did they choose now to open fire, a lethal shot right to the neck, and him dying? Why did they choose now? Well, you look at the final words, you kind of have a bit of a hunch.